Thank you so much for streaming our latest message from First Baptist Church. Here at FBC, our mission is to lead people into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ. We do that by thinking big, thinking small, thinking in, and thinking out. We hope that this message helps you as you continue to grow in your faith. If you would like to stay connected to FBC, you can visit our website at fbcloyd.ca, look us up on Facebook and Instagram, or download our free mobile app. Now here's the latest from FBC. Enjoy.
Anyways, this is week 2 of our Ask It series. I know a lot of you weren't here last week because of the ice rinks and all that, so maybe you've caught up on the app or through the YouTube channel. Last week we kicked off this 6-week series talking about this question that will revolutionize how you make decisions. And in our small groups, we've been watching the video and we've been talking about, watching Andy Stanley talk about this question we've been talking about in our small groups. And so I hope your small groups were awesome. If you're not in a small group, join one. And you don't even have to come talk to me. I know that's how it happens a lot. Just find some people around you, say, hey, in a small group, can I show up at your house? And hopefully they'll give you the right address. If you're in a small group, look around, find some people that kind of look like you and just be like, hey, you should come to my house and hang out for small group. My small group this week was awesome. It's interesting when you've got you and a group of grade 10 boys and you're talking about like foolish decisions versus wise decisions. Some of the stories that come out are like interesting, to say the least. It's a good thing that we, for their sake and for yours, that we have this kind of rule that it gets said in small group stays in small group. But it was pretty awesome, and hopefully you guys have been able to have some transparent times where you tell those crazy stories about, this is where I haven't practiced wisdom, and use that as a stepping stone to move towards asking yourself, what is the wise thing to do? Anyways, I'm excited to carry on, but before we do that, let's pray. God, thank you so much for this morning. Thank you that you love us. Thank you that you have given us FBC, a place that we can come and sing songs about you and think about how awesome you are and just engage in that conversation about how amazing you are. I pray that you would help us keep drawing closer to you and that you would keep leading us into a growing relationship with you, God. You are amazing. As we dive deeper into this series about wisdom, please fill us with wisdom. Help us be a church that is known by how we make decisions with wisdom rather than foolishness, God. Please speak to us this morning. We love you so much. Amen. So last week we kicked it off and we talked about this big question, the question that will revolutionize how you make decisions. And this week, the sermon is entitled The Alternatives. Last week was called The Question. That's because we talked about this question, and the question is, what is the wise thing to do? So there's some blanks in your bulletin if you're a note taker and you want to follow along. So this question, what is the wise thing to do, is this question that Andy Stanley throws out as this question that will revolutionize how you make decisions. It will save you from heartbreak. It will save you from hardship. It will save you from going down paths you don't want to go down. And this is the question that essentially we're going to be talking about for the next 6 weeks. What a simple question, right? Like, what a simple question, the fact that, like, we can all remember that and say that, but what a difficult question when it actually comes down to applying that to your life. And so last week, your homework was, so Andy Stanley, we got together and we planned this series together, and we decided that your homework for the first 3 weeks, just kidding, like I said last week, he doesn't even know I exist. I could stop living, he'd have no idea. His homework, and we gave you the same homework here, was just to ask the question. And something really funny happened with me. So I know a lot of people, you come to church, pastor gives out homework, and you're like, yeah, for sure. And then you leave, and 5 minutes later, you don't remember what the homework was. And even if you do, you're like, I don't really feel like doing it. I'm busy and stuff like that. So that's like me sometimes. But Sunday night, I got a pretty hilarious reminder about it, about doing my homework. So Monday was Taliesy's birthday. And for those of you who don't know, that's my wife. And so Sunday nights after youth, some people play basketball in the gym, a group of dudes. And so I always go there and play basketball. And then afterwards, a lot of times, Darren and I will be lingering. And if you know Darren and me, you know that we love strategy board games. And a lot of times on Sunday nights, there's this game called DC Deck Building Game. It's like the superhero game. I know it sounds super awesome, right? And we'll play that. And sometimes we'll play like 1 or 2 or 10 games. Or we don't work on Mondays, so we'll stay out a little late. And so anyways, what happens is sometimes I get home really late. So then it means I sleep in a bit later on Mondays. So I told Taliesin on Sunday, I said, I'm not gonna come home super late tonight. That way I'll wake up early and we can hang out for your whole birthday. And she's like, oh, great. No, so anyways, she texts me, we finished playing basketball, we set up some stuff for the Cornerstones, and she texts me at 10:45, and I'm just about to leave. And she says, hey, Ryan, what time are you coming home? And I said, I just started a game of DC with Darren, I'm sorry, which wasn't true at all. It's a total lie. And I was like, sorry, it might be a little while, but I'll be home at some point kind of thing. And she's like, you forgot to do your homework. And this is Sunday night, and I'm the one that gave the homework out. I'm like, what homework? And she's like, you forgot to ask it. And I was like, oh, right. So she's like, kind of convicting me and challenging. She's really nice, but she's like kind of nicely throwing it in my face that I'm being an idiot, and which she doesn't know that I'm actually not. And so anyways, I'm like, oh, she's like, you forgot to ask. I'm like, oh, right. And so I'm like, I'm so sorry. She's like, no, you're not. I'm like, that's true. And so then I get home. I'm like, ah. And so anyways, some people in here probably don't think that was the wise thing to do, but I thought it was really funny. But it was cool because she reminded me to do my homework, even though I kind of lied to her. So anyways, hopefully asking this question, hopefully you've done it at least once this week. Hopefully you've done it more than that, or hopefully you can maybe look back at your week and say, in which situations could I have asked this question? Whether you made the wise decision or not, this is a question that you can always be asking, big decisions and little decisions. And hopefully it's been revealing. Like I said last week, a lot of times one of the things you'll reveal is that naturally you do not have your own best interests in mind, myself included. So we broke this down into 3 kind of sub-questions. In light of my past experience, what is the wise thing to do? So in light of what you've been through in life, in light of what you've experienced, in light of, the bad things that have happened in your life, the good things that have happened in your life, in light of those, in light of how the world works and how you work, what is the wise thing to do? In light of my current circumstances, what is the wise thing to do? And this one is really massively formative in this question. Where you're at in life, your current context, who's around you, who you have relationship with, your relational status, your financial situation, at what stage you're at in life, this adds a lot of definition to what is actually the wise thing to do. In light of my future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing to do? So, you can look down the road and say, here's where I would love to end up. Here's what I would love to accomplish. At the end of my life, this is what I'd love to be known for. But you can also look down the road and say, this is where I don't want to end up. This is what I don't want to be remembered for. This is what I don't want my life to look like down the road. You can think of people in your life, you're like, I would love to be where they are when I'm at that point in life. And you can probably look at other people or situations in the world and say, when I'm there, I hope my life doesn't look anything like that. And that's not to sound harsh, but it's good to assess where you want to end up. And so in light of that, what is the wise thing to do now? Now, I just want to say, you guys are a really lucky church. You are really lucky to have me as your pastor, because I watch those Andy Stanley videos, and he makes the crowd repeat these questions after him. So I just want to say you're welcome that I don't do that to you, okay? And my grade 10 small group boys, though, they love that. So when we're in small group, they're screaming it. When he's read this, they're screaming it. So 8 minutes later, we can hear what he's been talking about for the past 8 minutes. But anyways, you're welcome that I don't make you do that. Okay, hopefully you just remember it. So in light of my past experience, in light of my current circumstance, in light of my future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing to do? This whole series points to this idea of being wise and asking this question that will push us towards being wise. If you've read the book of James, you'll know that wisdom is a gift that God gives, and gives quite liberally and generously. He wants to give us wisdom. And when I think about, imagine being part of a church family. Look around, it's pretty full in here. Imagine if this many people actually started asking, what's the wise thing to do? And in light of these 3 different elements, what is the wise thing to do? Imagine even by the end of the series, what our church would look like if we were a church that was passionately asking God for wisdom and trying to implement that in our lives. Imagine a year from now, we're that church that, when it comes down to decision making, we make wise, solid decisions. We're not just foolishly forgetting about the past or our current circumstances or the future and making decisions. I think that would be pretty awesome. So last week we talked about kind of the difference between foolishness and wisdom and how the Bible contrasts those two. And there's kind of the story about this crazy woman who's either building a house or tearing the house down. If you weren't here, then you won't know what I'm talking about. But we talked about how wisdom is the proper application of knowledge and how foolishness is the improper application of knowledge. So I think everyone in this room looks pretty smart. Some things. You learned a whole language, at least one, by the time you were 3 or 4 or something like that. That's pretty amazing. We're sitting in a room full of people who know stuff. They've learned things through the time that they've lived. But what you do with that knowledge is really what defines how useful that knowledge is. If you don't properly apply it to your life, it's foolishness. If you properly apply it to your life, it's wisdom. I'm going to spend the next 2 minutes doing something that's like has no real spiritual application, or just it's kind of just fun. So anyways, if you don't like fun, then you can just like fall asleep for the next 2 minutes or whatever. But while we've been thinking about foolishness and wisdom, it made me think about one of my favorite things from my childhood. So I'll give you a little bit of context around this first. So when I was a kid, we didn't have TV. And now when I say that, most people are like, yeah, we grew up with Peasant Vision, like 3 or 4 channels. And I just want to say, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about we had a TV screen that had no channels coming into it, okay? So, my parents didn't want any channels, and so what it was like you could get a few different colors of static or else that like solid orange screen, but that was it. You couldn't get like fuzzy Tiny Toons in my house. No TV, which I hated my parents for back then because my grandparents had cable and my friends had cable, and I was like, Mom, Dad, you guys are the worst parents. Now I look back and I'm like, wise parenting choice. No screen time for your kids, great choice. And so, but anyways, what would happen since my grandparents had cable? Well, 2 things. When we go to their house, we'd just binge. But the other thing is that my parents decided that since they wouldn't let us have TV, what they would let us do is they would let us get our grandpa to video a few TV shows for us. So we could watch them on our VCR at home. So we had those VHS tables cassettes, VHS things, whatever. I don't know what I'm saying. And they go into the VCR and you watch them, right? And so most of the shows that my parents got my grandpa to record were, in my opinion, pretty lame. Okay, so there was like, they'd get like Touched by an Angel, if you guys remember that show, Little House on the Prairie, that was the worst. They got Columbo, which was kind of like, at least I'm not watching Little House on the Prairie, but and at least I'm not reading a book. But so anyways, one of my favorite TV show as a kid, this cartoon, I loved it. Maybe you remember or not. It was called Animaniacs. Okay, this was the best show ever. And they had this segment called Good Idea, Bad Idea. And like I said, you don't have to take notes on this because like we're just going to watch this for fun, and you can forget about it afterwards. But this is all I can think about when I'm thinking about foolishness and wisdom. So I'm going to show you guys a little collection of something. If you know me, you know that I would totally still eat that Easter egg on Christmas morning. So anyways, I'm sorry, young people, that cartoons just aren't that good nowadays. But that was the best. Anyways, you can just forget about that, okay? So anyways, this whole series, we're talking about making wise decisions. We've kind of been talking about this contrast between foolishness and wisdom. And this morning, we're going to open that contrast up a little bit more. Because the idea is that we should be wanting to be wise. We should be wanting to make wise choices. This series points towards that. But then, if we're not, then you have to ask yourself, well, what are the alternatives? So Andy Stanley this week, he talks about these 3 different alternatives, these kind of 3 other options or categories that you can fall into. And he takes these largely from the book of Proverbs, which is mostly written by this king named Solomon. So if you know who Solomon is, he was the 3rd king of Israel. He was David's son. And this guy is like the in-house professional on being wise. Like you all have those friends who like, they know about certain things. If you've got like a plumbing question, you're like, I don't know what to do. You call that one friend that you're like, I know this. And so this guy is the wisdom guy. So what happens is Solomon becomes king, and God kind of shows up and says, hey, Solomon, now that you're king, I'm going to hook you up. What do you want? What's one thing you want? And it's kind of like, the picture I get is kind of like the genie who shows up. It's like, you've got one wish. And we're all thinking, ask for 1,000 more wishes, Solomon, 1,000 more wishes, because then you can ask for anything. But what Solomon asked for is this, and I'll read you this passage. In 2 Chronicles 1, 8-10, Solomon says, you have shown great kindness to David my father and have made me king in his place. Now, Lord God, let your promise to my father David be confirmed, for you have made me king over a people who are as numerous as the dust of the earth. So here's his request. Give me wisdom and knowledge that I may lead this people, for who is able to govern this great people of yours? And we read that and we're thinking, are you kidding? Like that's the one thing you ask for, but he's like, right answer, you got it. Now I'm going to hook you up with everything. He becomes like the most ballin' king of all time. God gives him like money and power and everything, and he's got it all together. One thing that I think is really interesting is Solomon doesn't just say, I want wisdom. He doesn't just say, I want knowledge. He says, I want both. Knowing that categorically they're kind of 2 different things, but they work together so well. We like I said last week, I hope you guys come to FBC and learn something. I hope that in life you learn something. But more importantly, I hope that you take what you learn and you actually find life change there. You actually apply it to your life, that you actually walk away and say, because I know things, I'm a different and a better person. I look a little bit more like Jesus because of what I've learned. So we're going to talk about these 3 alternatives. The first alternative, there's some blanks in your bulletin. The first alternative is the simple. Okay, and so when you watch the video this week, you see that Andy Stanley has these like really nice bar stool chairs with these really nice signs that are designed just for the series. I just have slides. I'm sorry that I don't have like cool props like him, but here's my deal. If you guys want cool props, keep inviting your friends, and when we have 20,000 people a weekend like Andy Stanley does, I will have bar stools with nice little signs on them. I will keep up with that, I promise. Anyways, he talks about this first category. It's the simple, and so he has these chairs. It's kind of this chair that you sit in, this camp that you can fall into. The simple. And the simple can also be known as like naive or clueless. Okay, so right here is where like people are like, whoa, is he about to say that some of us are naive, simple, and clueless? And the answer is yes, but hear me out. I think that when we talk about wisdom, we're talking about something that all of us are going to struggle with. Naturally, we have this bend towards foolishness, and we're all going to struggle in different ways. So as we talk about this, as we talk about some of these different things, I don't want you to think, hey, Ryan's kind of coming down on me, or Ryan's calling me, not wise, or he's calling me simple or naive or clueless. The reality is that all of us struggle with these things. And I want you guys to know one thing. When Doug and I prepare these messages, we struggle, when we get up and we talk about things, it's not like because we're like, hey, we got this all figured out and we're perfect, so you guys got to follow our example. But a lot of us, and I think a lot of people, fall into this category of being simple. And it's not an insulting thing, but it would be a lot of people in our world. And being simple or naive or clueless is just a result of not knowing, of not having understanding or knowledge. Of the alternatives, this is actually probably going to be the tamest, safest alternative to be in. A lot of reasons people are simple and don't know and don't have that understanding and knowledge. There are so many reasons this could be. One could be, it could be your age. You could just be young and not have learned certain things yet. It could be your life experience, what you have or haven't experienced. It could be life situations around you that may or may not be in your control. One of the wisest things I think anybody in life could ever do is come to terms with the fact that at least in some ways in their life, they are simple. They are the category of the simple, that they don't have it figured out, that they don't know some things. One of the wisest choices you could ever do is recognize that in some areas or all areas of your life, this is where you're sitting. Because once you do that, you could actually become someone who is very, very wise. So I think a lot of people actually fall into this category. And you see this play out in a lot of different ways, but one example I kind of thought of is, I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen like the Talking to Americans show that Rick Mercer does, right? He goes down to the States, asks all these questions that as Canadians, like obviously we know that kind of thing, and we're just like, those guys are morons, right? When we used to tour in the States, we had so much fun with this. We'd tell people, especially in the southern states, for some reason it's way easier, but we would tell people all the time, we'd be like, did you know that in Canada we don't have shadows? It's really weird seeing shadows down here. And the amazing thing is like more often than not, like way more often than not, people totally believed us, like 100%, no questions asked. I remember we were playing this one show in Oklahoma, and this girl was talking to me at the merch table before we had played, and I had said that we were from Canada, and she said, oh, don't you guys have unicorns in Canada? To which I obviously said, you guys don't? And so anyways, totally bought into it. So anyways, she walks away and I pull up my phone. I used to tweet a lot. I haven't tweeted in a long time. It took me a long time to find this tweet, but I tweeted this. I said, a girl in Oklahoma just asked me if we have unicorns in Canada. She very literally now believes that we have unicorns in Canada because I went ahead and confirmed that for her. The really funny thing is that I was on stage, and I guess while we were on stage, she's like on her phone and found my Twitter and followed me and was like, and came up to me afterwards. She's like, hey, you lied to me. I was like, yeah, it's true, I did. So then I told her we don't have unicorns, but we also don't have shadows. And she's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. It's not that all Americans have no IQ. It's not that they just don't know stuff. Like they can do math and stuff like that. They just don't know things about Canada. They haven't learned about Canada. What they learn about Canada is like usually just false things that people say about our healthcare to try to get into office. What they learn about Canada is so, I'm not joking, what they learn about Canada is so limited and they just don't know. They're simple. So if I went up to them and said, hey, let me actually tell you about Canada. So like if they came up here, they'd be like, oh, this isn't really that much different. It's just like colder and, there's a lot of empty space, but it wouldn't be that different. To be simple is simply to lack wisdom as a result of not having a clear understanding. And this is often just a result of a lack of experience. This isn't an insulting thing to say, hey, you know what, in this area or in your life, you might fall into this category. You're simple. It's just to say, hey, you know what, you've got some things to work on. And I'm going to guess we all have some different things to work on. Andy talks about how, the simple, they think things like nothing's going to happen. They walk around and say nothing's going to happen. The future is secure. But this is so contrary to what the Bible says. In James 4, the Bible warns us about the future and says it's out of your control. You don't know. You can't just walk around saying, I know what the future is going to have in store, and simply just think that. The simple think they can handle everything. They think life's going to be simple and make sense, and they can handle it, and they're all good, and that when people get in their way, that they're wrong, and that they're just overreacting, that they're freaking out about things that they don't need to. Remember last week we looked at this passage in Ephesians 5, verse 15, where Paul says, be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise. Paul's not overreacting. He's not being overprotective. He's just understanding, because this passage goes on to say that the days are evil. This is why you need to be careful. Paul's saying the days are evil. It will pull you away from being wise. Your spiritual well-being, your mental well-being, your physical well-being, your financial well-being are always at stake. And if you're simple and you just don't understand the gravity of that situation, then you're headed for disaster. Simple people usually just haven't experienced certain pains that life can bring. Andy talks about how a lot of people are simple because they just haven't been that in debt yet. They haven't been that heartbroken yet. They haven't been that addicted to something yet. They haven't been in a rough enough situation. And a lot of times, they're just young and haven't lived yet. This is not a dig on young people, but one of the hardest things for me to come to terms with as I was growing up is, I'm younger than some people, and I just don't know some things that some people know. And not always that young people don't know the things that older people know, but a lot of times that's the case. We just have less experience when we're young. And young people, a lot of this is going to apply to you. And you could be young, objectively. You could also be young relative to someone else in your world. But older people have wisdom, and they want to offer it to you as a gift. And that's actually a benefit. If you're anything like me, someone comes along, it tells you, this is actually how you should live your life, and that's tough. We don't want to hear that. We want to have come up with all our own opinions and decisions. See, older people can tell you what they've learned from past experiences. They can tell you, if you spend your money that way, this is where you'll end up. But if you spend your money or invest your money this way, this is where you could end up. If you get into that relationship, if you date that person, or if you act like that in that relationship, this is where you'll for sure end up. But if you wait, if you practice patience, or maybe if you think about this first or act this way, this is where you could end up. This is how awesome it could be. If you mess around with certain life choices or substances, or you hang around with certain people, this is where, from past experience, from people who have more experience from you, this is where you could end up. Andy talks about how young people have such a benefit and such an opportunity. Your opportunity is that you get to be young, you get to be youthful. Your body doesn't just get sore because you slept. You get to have your youth, but you also have the benefit of getting wisdom and insight and understanding from people who are older than you. And at any stage of life, that's you. You have the benefit of being younger than people, but also the benefit of getting wisdom and understanding from you. Older people have made the mistakes so that you don't have to. Older people can say, you know what, I've been down that road, so you don't have to go down that road. I can tell you how damaging and destructive and hurtful that is, so you don't have to do that. But here's the tricky part about that, and especially young people. For me, I missed out on this a lot because I struggled with this. First of all, you'll have to ask for it. You'll have to ask for advice from people who know more than you. So that takes a lot of humility to say, hey, you know what, I don't know. Please teach me. And secondly, probably the harder part is you'll actually have to make a change, because you can go and ask for it and they'll tell you something you don't like, and that's where the conversation ends. But sometimes trusting some people who say, in light of my past experiences, here are choices that you don't have to make. I think about this a lot with our youth who get into relationships. In general, we encourage our youth to wait until after junior high and high school to start dating. But the biggest thing for me is knowing that our youth, when they get into relationships, or even young people, maybe you've just graduated, when you're getting into relationships, have adults in your life. Your peers are awesome. They'll cheer you on and stuff, but they'll cheer you on no matter what direction you're going, pretty much. Get some adults in your life who have been down that road. We've made all those mistakes so that you don't have to. We have traded in some of our future hopes and dreams because of choices we've made so that you don't have to. What a benefit for you guys. And older people, we have such a benefit too. I don't really know which category. You might be sitting there and say, hey, Ryan called himself young or old, and he's not. But we all kind of fall into these different categories. But if you're an older person, you have such a benefit too. You have the opportunity to take all your past mistakes, your past hurts, your past benefits, and not only learn from them and grow from them, but you have the opportunity to offer that to people and save them from some of the biggest regrets that you've faced in your life, to save them from some of the hardest things that you've gone through in your life. But first of all, that needs to be done with love and with care. I know sometimes you get older and you know things, and you're just like I know Darren's little daughter, Vianne, she'll argue with me, and I'll just argue right back, and I'm just like, what am I doing? I'm arguing with a 5-year-old. But we get frustrated because someone younger than us doesn't know things. We're judgmental or condescending or so harsh and critical of people, forgetting that we were once there too, and we once didn't have it all figured out like we do now. So in love, we can offer that to people. And I want to take a quick second to say that is why we do small groups here at church, and we are still totally in need of small group leaders, both for kids and for youth, especially males. This is a bit of an advertisement pitch in the middle of my sermon, but this is because this is something I'm passionate about. We need people. A lot of people get freaked out about being a leader or being a small group leader. And I'll tell you, all you need is a pulse. So hopefully you have that. If not, Joel works for my cause, so he can help you out. So hopefully you have a pulse. You need to love Jesus, or at least be trying your best to live a life that shows that you love Jesus. And you need to care enough about the future of our next generation and the generation after that to make some small sacrifices to say, let's prevent them from going down some of the roads that we went down so that they don't have to trade in some of their future hopes and dreams, so that they don't have to make the mess that we once made. Come talk to us. I could rant about that for hours, so I'm going to hop back onto my outline here. This is what Proverbs 8:5 says about the simple. It says, you who are simple gain prudence. So prudence, gain understanding and knowledge and put it into action. Learn things and do stuff with it. This is what prudence is. You who are simple gain prudence. The first alternative is being simple. And simple people, I would say, first of all, recognize that you're simple. And secondly, do not trade in your future for what you want in the moment. Go to people and say, tell me stuff. Let me learn. Help me understand, and then put it into practice. The next two are going to go through a little bit faster. The second alternative is the fool. Unlike the simple, the fool actually knows what's right and wrong. They actually have understanding, but they just don't care. They know the danger and the risk of what they're doing, but they actually have just resigned in their mind to the fact that they don't actually care. They don't learn from their past experiences. There's this intense word picture in Proverbs 26:11 that says, as a dog returns to its vomit, so fools repeat their folly. Okay, this is so we were on tour years ago, and we were in Washington. These people let us stay at their house, some friends of ours, and we woke up in the morning and they had all gone to work and school and doing stuff that people with real jobs do. And we woke up and they had left their house into our care, trust and care, which is probably not the wise thing to do. But we're packing up, we're about to leave, and I went to do what we called an idiot check, okay? And it wasn't to check if there were idiots in the house, because we had already left. But what an idiot check was oftentimes one of us would forget stuff in the house, we'd be down the road and we're like, oh man. And I'm not gonna say which of us was the worst for that, because I wouldn't want Barry to feel bad. But so anyways, I go into the house to do an idiot check. And so I'm looking around and making sure we haven't forgotten anything or anyone. And they have this dog. And I'm about to leave. I'm done the idiot check. I'm 5 seconds from being out the door. And all of a sudden this dog starts making this weird sound, just this sound, and just lays out this pile of puke on the floor. I'm not kidding. It was disgusting. And so the first thing that entered my mind was, the owners of this house have no idea at what time that puke hit the floor and at what time we left, okay? They don't know. That if we leave, they'll just assume this happened after we left, okay? And so I was just I'm out of here. But then I was oh, no, I better clean this. So I go, and I'm cleaning up, and this is disgusting, vile, I'm not germaphobe. I'm not grossed out by things that easily. I'd be prime candidate for that old show Fear Factor. I'll eat anything, but this was disgusting. And the crazy thing is the dog's trying to get in there. He's yeah, hook me up. I'm this is wrong. But But how disgusting that is pales in comparison to us making foolish decisions with our lives and going back and repeating the same foolish decisions and bringing the same hurt and pain and heartbreak that's happened. There's this famous quote, most of you probably heard it, a lot of people attribute it to Einstein, but most people think it's not actually by him, but it goes like this. It says, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting different results. That doesn't make sense. If you keep doing the same thing over and over again, you're generally going to get the same results every time. The fool, the person who fits into this category, obviously has future hopes and dreams. They obviously have things they aspire to, places they want to end up. But in light of the past, they still just don't change. They don't make wise choices. Proverbs 1:32, it says, the waywardness of the simple will kill them, and the complacency of fools will destroy them. Fools will be destroyed because they just don't care. They're just apathetic. They're complacent. And this passage says that the simple and the fool both come to destruction. It's going to hurt both of them. It's going to get both of them. But for fools, it's not only themselves that it will hurt. Proverbs 13:20 says this, walk with the wise and become wise. But check this out. For a companion of fools suffers harm. Foolishness not only hurts yourself, it not only messes up your own life, but it messes up the lives of those around you. And he talks about how your foolishness will literally blind you from your selfishness. It will make you blind to how selfish you are. Because not only do you not care about your own future when you're being a fool, but you also, through your actions, show that you don't even care about the future of your loved ones, the future of those around you. Not only do you not care that your life gets screwed up and that you've got a mess, but you've decided, if everyone else's life gets screwed up around me too, I don't care. And again, it's not because they don't know. I mean, you're not going to find a lot of people who think that drunk driving is okay, right? But still, for some reason, people drink and then get behind the wheel because they've just decided, I know this is wrong. I know the stats. I know what happens. You're not going to find a lot of people who are like, you know what, pornography isn't completely damaging and destructive. You're not going to find a lot of people who are going to argue with that. But still, even though it will screw up you and your entire family's life and all your friends around you, your lives, if you don't get some help, we continue on. Financial decisions. We know how bad of a we know how that's played out for other people. We know. You go up to a fool and you say, this is how it's going to play out. And they say, I know. I just don't care. The third category is the mocker. And the mocker is like the fool, but way, way, way worse. They're like a professional fool who does it for a living. You know, they're like the gold medal Olympian of being a fool. You know, like every Olympics, like they are racking up the gold medals in this category. Everyone's got a poster of them on their wall. It's like, this is the fool of all fools. They've gotten gold medals at every Olympics for the past century. Apparently they live for a long time too. So Proverbs 21:24 talks about this. It says, the proud and arrogant person, mocker is his name, behaves with insolent fury. So first of all, it says that they are not only proud and arrogant, but they behave with insolent fury. Let me break that down. Insolent means like rude and aggressive, and fury means like anger or something that will damage or hurt someone. So inside they have this rude and brash and arrogant and proud spirit that looks out to hurt and damage other people around them. And you know people like this. I'm sure you know people like this. In all these categories, it's really easy to think of people like this that you know, right? Like we can all be like, oh, I know this person, they're a mocker, this person's a fool, this person's simple. And it's good to think about that because we want to help our friends. But again, in this series, I ask you, think about how these relate to you. But you know people like this. You know, they call or you know they're coming to see you, they're coming to talk to you, and you're thinking, what now? What do I do now? What are they going to complain about now? They're always complaining, always condescending, always proud. They are the smartest people in the world. They know more than all of us combined. They have it all figured out, and they're happy to make us feel like garbage, letting us know that. These people are almost impossible to have a relationship with, but they're not beyond God's help. Oftentimes they're beyond our help for the most part, but what we can do is we can pray for them that God would soften their hearts. And maybe you're feeling right now, you fall into this category, and get people around you to pray for you. It is okay, but we want to pray for you. We want to ask God to soften your heart. Andy Stanley kind of sums up these four, and he pulls out some passages from Proverbs to put it together in a way that I think is just brilliant. He talks about when you correct people in these four different camps, how it plays out. And this is what he says. He says, correct the simple and they won't get you. You correct a simple person and they'll be like, I just don't get it. You have to keep being persistent. You have to dig in and say, I want you to understand. I want to give you knowledge and insight so that you can understand. I want you to get what I'm trying to say to you here. Correct the fool and they'll ignore you. Correct a fool and they'll say, I know how bad this is. I just don't care. And you correct the mocker, and they will hate you. This is someone who looks at people who are being wise and looks down on them. In fact, people who will stand up and correct a mocker and show that they have values and wisdom will be the worst enemies of mockers. They will be the people that mockers hate the most, and they will put them down the most. Maybe you felt hurt or persecuted or burned by these types of people. I'd say good for you. Good for you that you've stood up to people who are so opposed to wisdom. And fourthly, he says, correct the wise, and they will thank you. What a good test for all of us here at FBC to think when someone comes up and corrects us and says, hey, you should think about this, or, I noticed in this area of your life you could use some work. How do you respond? You just be like, I don't get it. Do you just ignore the people like, I know, but I just don't care enough? Do you put the people down and insult them? Are you too arrogant to hear? Or do you say, hey, thank you so much for caring enough about me to come and say something? I know some people come and complain and rip on us, and that's tough to hear. And I know that sometimes even when people do it gently, it's tough to hear. But at the end of the day, are you coming back and saying, thanks, I know I have some space to grow, so thank you so much. Or even, I don't even agree with you, but thanks for giving me something to think about. Thanks for reminding me that I'm not perfect. Humility is linked so much throughout wisdom literature in the Bible to wisdom. If you can't practice humility, you will never find yourself sitting in the chair of the wise. So the question is this morning, where do you fall into these options? Maybe you're just in one of them completely. Maybe you're a hybrid. Maybe you're like, in this area of my life, I'm here, but in this area of my life, I'm really sitting in this camp. Or with these certain decisions, I'm really sitting here. I'd ask you, take an honest assessment today. Maybe talk through it with your small group, with your family, and say, hey, honestly, where am I? And if you find in areas of your life or in all of your life that you're a mocker, then mockers, you need to start listening to other people and know that you're not the smartest person in the world. 7 billion people in the world, your chances of being the smartest one of them is like 1 in 7 billion approximately. So you're not the smartest person in the world. You need to listen. Fools, you need to start caring and applying what you know so that others around you won't be hurt. Fools, you need to stop trading in your future hopes and dreams, the future hopes and dreams of people around you, by starting to care about what you actually know. And the simple, you need to know that it is totally okay to not have it all figured out. None of us have it all figured out. If you're simple in your life or in your area, that's okay. But you need to be willing to learn from others, to go up to others and say, can you help me out here? Teach me, push me, encourage me. Your homework, like last week, is simply to ask it. In light of your past experiences, current circumstances, and future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing to do? You don't have to go make any big life changes yet. If you want to get like bonus marks for having your assignment in early, you can go ahead and make some life changes. But for the next couple weeks, just ask it. What is the wise thing to do? Let's pray. God, thank you so much that you love us enough to not only have relationship with us and to care about us, but to give us wisdom. Even when we do a really good job of making it difficult for you to give it to us, God. Thank you that you are so willing to put up with us and to persevere and to love us enough to train us to be wise. I pray that we would be a church that asks what the wise thing to do is and that makes decisions according to that, God. Thank you for loving us. We love you so much, God. Amen. Have an awesome week, guys. Thanks for being here.